the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth kind of love. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the true kind of love.
We're entering the final week of Summerpalooza 5 Steven Universe Marathon. I gotta say, these episodes really changed my perspective a lot more, despite with one detail that I don't agree with, which is fragments that we're gonna be getting into in the next 2 days. But in the meantime, we're gonna be entering into the last episode involving Peridot, despite the fact that she appears in the last 2 episodes of Future. In this episode, Steven has random dreams that are horrible, and then when Peridot arrives, he promised to her that he recorded the episodes of the reboot Camp Pining Hearts, but once they watch the episodes, they couldn't stand it. And after learning that in Steven's dream, he can actually have his and Peridot's own version of Camp Pining Hearts, they take advantage of it, but at the same time, due to the amount of dreams that Steven has with so many differences, like blue diamond being a fish and yellow diamond being a pineapple, among with other random things, it's not possible to make a perfect reboot in the minds of Steven and Peridot. While this episode isn't as important as the episodes we're going to be tackling this week, I can't deny that this episode is important on its own for how it's structured. Like, if people are going to bring up the line that Steven said when he learned that his TV is broadcasting his dreams and this leads to Cartoonchi making fun of it, let me just say this is that I don't enjoy Cartoonchi's videos involving Steven Universe Future like I did in the past, because in all honesty, those videos were a lot more outdated to the point that I didn't find the line that Steven said idiotic of what Cartoonchi made out to be. This episode is similar to Kiki's Pizza Delivery Service, with the only differences of Peridot taking the role of Kiki, while Steven, similar to the pizza episode, is in someone else's dream. The only difference is that the dream that he's in is inside the show Camp Pining Hearts. And after rewatching this episode for how Steven's dreams are like, for how he has no control of, it made me see that his trauma is increasing the more I realize that he wants to do things right when it comes to the script that Peridot gave to him. And the way I see it, it made me feel like that this episode has been overlooked for being mostly a Steven and Peridot episode, which it is, but when it comes to the dreams itself, it made me feel like that Steven is trying to make things right with Peridot, but at the same time, the ideas that Peridot did weren't really the best. The representation in this episode is mainly people like Steven and Peridot making their own version of the reboot of Camp Pining Hearts, which, in all honesty, sums up a lot on how they will react due to the reboot being different and not in the way that they wanted it to be. But, in all honesty, we've all been there and there's no avoiding that. Looking into Peridot's point of view, she really wanted her version of Camp Pining Hearts to be good and unexpected, but at the same time, she is the only character that actually witnesses Steven's dreams taking full effect. Granted, Kiki was another character, but when it comes to a gem, she's the only one who actually recognizes Steven's dreams taking full effect on basically a TV show, and for how Steven's situation back in season 3 was a different story, I really feel like him doing the same thing here is an indicator that with his mindset happening, with so many things coming to him for his future and Peridot's future. It's honestly difficult for him to take Peridot's route because he can't be able to control his dreams. We can't control our dreams, and that's the reality that we see in this episode. It's one thing to help someone else's dreams when they keep having the same dream over and over, but doing a picture perfect scene inside of a dream that can get a lot more overwhelming, this is a lot more difficult for Steven to handle. Just seeing Connie as Obsidian in this episode, I clearly didn't pay attention completely, and I really was focusing on the Carnivorous episodes when I did the Carnivorous parts. Believe me, this really made me feel more confused if I actually viewed this episode as a random episode and took Cartoonshi's word for granted. I didn't remember how these episodes were structured despite being rushed, and when I describe rushed, that's mainly the final 5 episodes of this show that really feels like that this entire epilogue deserves 40 episodes at least. It may be too much, but at the same time it will have showcased more of the characters, and having this epilogue mostly a reward and a you're welcome from the studio, who actually listened to the criticisms a lot more and actually put more focus on executing the characters a lot more if they actually have more time. It's not in the same scenario of the production of Season 5, but believe me, the more I look into these scenes and how they're executed, it made me see more of how this epilogue could have been the saving grace of the series just when it comes to an end. After saw what Steven said to Peridot in his dream, Peridot confessed, and she is aware that this was a huge mistake, and for me personally, for this being the final episode and how they make amends, it really feels like a proper final episode involving Peridot for how changed she has become. When I first viewed this episode 4 years ago, I'm mostly feeling depression that this is the final episode centering around Peridot, and just by seeing her now, it made me view Peridot as someone who actually has limits, and realizing that the amount of times that she had to redo the scene for the sake of making it perfect, she is a lot more remorseful than how Kiki and her sister went through from Season 3. And considering that this is a lot more severe in comparison to that episode, it's honestly best to laugh of how bad the reboot is, because Steven and Peridot weren't hate watching in the end of this episode. They were just laughing of how bad it is and judging of how they're better role models instead of being hate watchers. Then that's honestly what makes this episode better in my book. And since that we're heading into the following 6 episodes, they're the big bangers, and I quote that as how serious they are. Believe me, even though that this epilogue should have been much more better with more episodes, I have to admit that the 6 episodes, aside from one episode that I have an issue with, are literally the saving graces, even if they deserve more execution on having more episodes in between. I'm giving this episode an 8 out of 10.